God.
And that bill is falling on your shoulders. Citizens Property Insurance, the state-run property insurance company, the insurer of last resort, it's called, just crested 1 million policies. It's now the largest insurer in the state. By the end of 2023, it's projected to have 1.7 million policies, and shortly after that, over 2 million. It's never been designed for. By a stroke of the pen from the Office of Insurance Regulation. By the way, the current insurance commissioner was appointed to the role when he was 34 years old, and he has a background as a high school math teacher and track coach. So that's who you want overseeing the insurance industry in Florida. That affects 22 million people and covers trillions of dollars of real estate.
No money background at all?
No. He was like, he had a minor CPA license. But he was working as a math teacher and track coach. And by a stroke of his pen, they ponied up Citizens Property Insurance as a backstop to private insurance companies in the event that they go insolvent or are unable to pay property insurance claims after a storm. That's going to be paid for by every single one of you in this room. The current CFO has cost everybody money. Do we have any retired teachers, firefighters, city, county workers in here? A bunch.
A lot of state workers.
A lot of state workers. I know, Dave. And for those of you in the Florida retirement system with your pensions in Florida, as I mentioned, the CFO is also in the State Board of Administration. Do you guys remember in the news? It's like a little story. We haven't been talking about it much, but Russia invaded Ukraine.
Yeah.
It's a joke. Of course, everybody knows. The world came down on Russia with economic sanctions, right? We knew their economy was going to tank. 25 states had the foresight to divest any retirement funds from Russian-held companies.
Oh, God.
Yeah, you know what's coming. Democrats across the state were begging the CFO to divest our retirement funds. Now, I don't know his official reason. I really think it's just to be contrarian, because Democrats asked, so he can't do it.
Oh, well, that's part of it.
Wow.
And Trump, I mean.
But he decided to bet on Russia instead of betting on you and your pensions and your futures. And to date, he's lost nearly every penny of the $300 million of your pension fund that was in Russian companies.
Oh.
And even worse, since the invasion, he's invested more money in Russian companies.
Oh, God.
What are we doing?
What, did they have to take it out of the woke companies? Did that ever become
Oh,
law?
so you're talking about this new rule.
Yeah.
I wasn't even getting into this, but you'll like this too. Talking about not taking what's called ESG into account when investing our state retirement funds. So ESG stands for environmental and social governance. It's one of those buzzwords. Like the Republicans lately have started getting afraid of letters. You know, you saw them get afraid of FBI and DOJ and IRS. Now it's CRT and WOKE and ESG and MICKEY. You know, what are these other letters that they're afraid of? But ESG, they're calling it this woke investing principle, right? Bloomberg did a study, 69% of CEOs in the United States identify as Republicans.
Oh, my God.
All of them use some form of ESG when deciding what to invest for their companies because it's been proven to have a higher rate of return and better security with their money because that's the way the world is trending. So they're trying to use this scare tactic to distract you from your property insurance bill going up. Because that solely can be laid at the feet of Jimmy Petronas, of the current CFO. He wants you talking about anything besides property insurance and your money. So he's trying to scare you. Now do keep in mind the legislature likes to ban things that have never happened before because they make great messaging. I was in the legislature and I voted against it when we banned sanctuary cities in Florida, even though there's never been a sanctuary city in Florida. And similarly, the SBA has never once, we've checked, used any type of ESG or principle in that manner when investing in the Florida retirement system. So they banned something that's never happened. But here's the thing. Part of their rule is like, we're not going to use this woke ideology. We're only going to use financial return on investing. If that were the case, they would have divested from Russia at the very beginning. So first off, it was very hypocritical. They've already violated their own rule. They stopped something that's never happened, and they put us into a potential pitfall because they're not going to use what's been shown to have the best rate of return. And economists from across the country when they heard about this, have been doing analyses, every single one said, what are you doing? This is a stupid idea. You're costing yourselves money. But they're scared.
What did they say to that?
They don't respond.
Well, just like the, yeah, okay.
Yeah, they don't respond. Because here's the thing. Now, I've said his name once or twice, but before you guys came here, and again, you're in Tallahassee, so you're very plugged in compared to most of the ratings. Who knows who the CFO is?
Jimmy
Jimmy Petronis. Most people, yeah, that's his background. His dad gave him a fish restaurant. Then he was appointed to the role.
Well, we knew
but he's hiding from
when
Florida.
Alex Sink was CFO, we knew.
I know, and Alex was my first endorsement. She hosted my kickoff event at her home. She's great. I totally forgot where I was going with that. But anyways.
Oh, fish restaurant.
Yeah. Those before fish restaurant. Oh, yeah, this is right. Jimmy's been hiding. The Democratic Governors Association did a poll as part of the way to recruit me to get to run. Out of all the statewide elected officials, he has by far the lowest name ID in the state. Less than 7% of the ratings know who he is. And he's hiding on purpose. That 7% who know who he is are pissed off at him because he's cost them money. I've done events where I was the only Democrat in the room with 50 Republicans. By the end of this discussion, all of them, including a member of the Republican Executive Committee of Lee County, said they're voting for me. Yesterday morning, who's heard of Brian Rust? He's out of Bay County. He's a hyper-conservative radio talk show host. He's kind of going on the same trajectory that Sean Hannity was on. I was on his show yesterday.
Okay.
And he was like, hey, I'm gotta ask, why are you here? Like, we put out a request that all the Democrats were the only one who has responded. Like, why are you guys here? And it's something that a lot of the Republicans here forget when they get to the Capitol. When you get elected, you don't represent only the people who voted for you. You don't represent just your party. You represent everybody. And they've forgotten that. And you see that in these culture wars. You guys remember when monkeypox was in the news a couple months ago? Do you know how Jimmy responded to that? He tweeted out a picture of the Democratic donkey and said, donkeypox. He made fun of half of the people of Florida. As an elected official supposed to be protecting you and representing you, instead he decided to ridicule you. Half of the people in Florida. We can do better. We can do a lot better. Now, there's just one more thing I'll say about the CFO's role. This is a friendly group of Democratic folks, so this is always a fun one. And then I can take some questions. The CFO is also the state auditor. And you've never seen anybody call those numbers like a nuclear submarine. It's in our blood.
Really?
But if you want to know what the Florida government's been doing with your tax dollars, if you want to live up to the Constitution and actually have checks and balances in our government again, if you don't want to ever hear the phrase President Ron DeSantis,
Oh, dear God.
then you want a Democrat as your chief financial officer. In fact, you need a Democrat as your chief financial officer. So thank you again for having me today. I'm Adam Hattersley. I'm your nominee to be the next a little bit of time. I got a friend stranded at a coffee shop I got to pick up before we go back to Tampa. Any questions?
Have you ever debated that guy?
We've asked. We've put out the request.
Oh, no response.
No response. USA Today has put out the request. We've agreed he hasn't. NPR put out the request. We've agreed he hasn't. The Florida Justice Association put out the request. We agreed he hasn't. A few other groups. He is. I'm not kidding when I say he's hiding. In fact,
Well,
yesterday,
yeah.
he's just trying to ride Ron's coattails back on. The Sun Sentinel endorsement recommendation came out last night, and the Orlando Sentinel came out this morning, both highly recommending me over Jimmy Petronis. I have the interview. I had the interview with Miami Herald in the car on the way home, and we're anticipating the Tampa Bay Times and Palm Beach Post coming out shortly. So that's every media market in the state. Yes.
I'm concerned because the feedback I got when I was making calls and saying we need to support this guy who's going up against Jimmy Petronis was, oh, don't blame Jimmy Petronis. What's happened to our assurance is the private lawyers. How do I retort to that?
right now in Florida, about 9% of the property insurance claims in the United States come out of the state of Florida.
Yeah, right.
76% of the property insurance related litigation and lawsuits come out of Florida. We are obviously doing something wrong. 49 states are getting this right, and we are getting this wrong. When the companies have gone insolvent, when they've left Florida, and about 27 other companies are getting their ratings downgraded. That's over half the insurance companies left in the state. And the reason for it is poor regulatory and legislative environment to operate. There are loopholes the size of a Mack truck that people are driving through, and it's all legal because nobody's taken on the task to fix it. Jimmy's had 5 years of opportunity to do this, and he's decided and chosen to do nothing. He's either unwilling or unable. Either one is disqualifying.
How would you go about it?
So there's quite a few things we can do. You guys remember about 12 years ago, sinkholes? And that was a big thing, driving insurance rates. Well, the legislature finally got together and closed those loopholes. And we need to do the same thing again. But now it's with certain roofing issues. My house is 13 years old, but we got dropped from our property insurance because the roof is now no longer insurable. Great, and all that onus to get insurance again is going to be on us with a $15,000 check to replace our roofs. So it's all of our responsibilities now. So we need a new insurance commissioner, first off. There's no way he should be ponying up your bank account as a backstop for any private insurance company that, based on bad regulation, was created for the sole purpose to be a gold parachute for their executives when they left town, which is kind of what's been going on. We need to change our legislation, and the CFO can work with, just like any of the cabinet members and the governor can work with legislators to craft and pass legislation to close these loopholes. We need to analyze what other states are doing right that we're doing wrong. For example, Texas requires companies to keep a certain amount of capital in the state so they can back up any potential insurance claims. Every single property insurance company in Florida is owned by a parent company outside the state that takes away any of their capital and other fees to show their own profit. There was not a major name storm for like 12 or 14 years in Florida. They could have been banking those premiums ready to go, so when Irma hit, when Michael hit, when Ian hit, they'd be ready to pay out these claims. But instead, all that money is gone. So if we require them to keep a certain amount in the state, one, it'll weed out the bad actors who are standing up shifty property insurance companies, literally just to build your money and run when they go belly up with a golden parachute. And by the way, there's no regulation or law saying that if you are the perpetrator of one of those insurance companies, you can just close down and start a new one and do it over again. So we do have laws, we do have regulations, but they're not being followed and adhered to. By law, anytime a property insurance company goes insolvent in Florida, the CFO's office is required to do a post-mortem and a deep dive to figure out why. Out of the 6 companies this year, and about, as I said before, the 8 companies in the last 5 or 10 years, take a guess, how many of those post-mortems have been done? Zero. Actually, right before the special session, they put out one, but it was 3 pages long from a company a dozen years ago that said nothing. Jimmy Petronas has no idea what's wrong with property insurance in Florida. And when I was in Iraq, when we got shot at, that was a problem. But we didn't ignore it. Because if you ignore that problem, it just gets worse. And right now, Jimmy is ignoring the problem of property insurance problem because it's just not convenient for him. It doesn't get him the likes or the clicks like railing about CRT or donkeypox does. So that's what he's focused on, and it's cost everybody in here. Yes?
What support are you getting? Some support from the veterans groups? And I asked this because Senator Torres spoke to us, this group, last month. He took an amendment that was very brave, and it helps kill a bill for tort reform on asbestos. And he did it for the veterans. But he only did it.
In the House.
He did it because you did it 2 weeks earlier.
Yeah.
A very unpopular stance on the floor of the House for you to do that. And thank you, because that killed that bill.
Good. Because what he's referring to, there's a bill being pushed by insurance companies and by. So there are certain trust funds set up that if you've been affected by asbestos, that you can get certain assistance. But by the time you get that diagnosis and it's determined cause of asbestos, you have maybe, what, 5-6 months to live if you're lucky?
Yeah.
And there are certain funds that you can go to help with some of those costs and treatment costs. And the bill they were trying to pass would require you to apply for every fund you could potentially be eligible for out of like the 13 before you were considered for assistance from any of them. It was a delay tactic.
Right.
Because I'm not going to know how many of these funds I'm eligible for. My doctor, my lawyer says, here's a fund, okay. But if you don't know, then they can delay your application, and they're just waiting for you to die. So I was trying to, and Senator Torres, we were trying to exempt veterans, because that was the only hope we had of trying to help anybody from this requirement, so they could just go in and get the immediate help they could right away. And yeah, so I ran that amendment in the
They
state
were
house.
so mad at him.
They were pissed at me. They were so mad at me, the speaker designate, who had not spoken about a bill or an amendment in 2 years, they had him debate against my amendment. There was only, I think, 15, 14 veterans between the House and the Senate when I was in. So they had the speaker designate, who was a veteran. He was a Navy lawyer, so a lot of seat time there. They had an Air Force veteran, another lawyer, a lot of air time there. Actually, no, they had 2 Air Force veterans who were both Air Force lawyers debate against my bill. It's like, well, if he's trying to do this for veterans, we'll have our veterans say why he's wrong. But they have the numbers anyway. Take a guess. How many bills died on the House floor in my 2 years in the legislature?
There's a lot.
0. They would not let a bill go to the floor unless the majority knew they were going to pass it.
Oh.
I'm not kidding when I say it's political theater. Take a guess how many bills died in committee? 1. And it was a Republican bill because they were trying to teach him a lesson to get back in line with leadership. But there are thousands of bills filed every year. And maybe 150 see the floor. They don't let them go to a vote or go to committee unless it's one of their bills and their priorities. When I was in the House, there were 73 Republicans, 47 Democrats. So about 30-something-ish, 40% of the bills filed were Democratic bills. 12% of the bills passed were Democratic. Only 14% of the bills that saw committee were Democratic. And not every bill that goes to committee goes to the floor. And it was only those, like, the mommy pleasers is kind of the term we had, like the ones that everybody loves that pass unanimously that the Republicans can claim victory on. Because if they had, for example, we've proposed ratifying the ERA in Florida. 15 years in a row, it's gotten 0 committee hearings in 15 years. Because they knew if they let that on the floor, they would be vilified for voting no. So they don't let it happen. Again, I'm not kidding when I say it's just political theater.
But we got strawberry shortcake.
We got strawberry shortcake and key lime pie, because that was important during COVID. Does everyone know what she's referring to?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, you guys are.
No, I don't.
No. So one of the bills, I think was it last year, 2 years ago, during COVID, there's a lot going on in the world, a lot of problems that people in Florida needed help with. And one of the biggest bills talked about was designating strawberry shortcake as a state dessert of Florida.
Wow.
Kid you not.
It passed.
And it passed.
Oh.
It is the law now.
Randy, do.
Mm-hmm. You can thank Lawrence McClure from House District 58 in Plant City for that.
Strawberry.
But those are the things that have been happening in Florida. The Republicans have been in control of the state House, the state Senate, the governor's mansion, and now the Supreme Court for 24 years. They've driven us, we've been listed as the least affordable state in the entire country.
The what?
The least affordable state to live in the entire country. Our property insurance market is the worst in the entire United States. We pay teachers 48th out of 50 in the country. What are we doing? For some reason, people have this misconception that if you're a Republican, you're good with money because you're conservative. The data says otherwise. Look at your property insurance bill. Look at your rent bill, and you tell me that Republicans are better with your money.
He just got
Yes.
13
I
codes and
guess by your
15
comments and the state rankings, it sounds like Mississippi is better off than Florida.
Yes.
That's disturbing.
Very much so. Our property insurance rates on average have doubled the past 3 years. And as of last month, they are triple the national average. What are we doing wrong that other states are doing right? They won't even have the conversation. Unless you're a Republican donor to Jimmy's campaign, he will not have a meeting with you. I had a policy when I was a representative. We turned down 0 meetings. We took every single meeting. Didn't matter if I agreed with you or not, or your organization agreed with me or not, or if you just wanted to come yell at me. People traveled however far across the state to come to Tallahassee to see their representatives. We owe it to them to hear them out. You know, like I said before, when you get elected, you don't only represent the people of your party or the people who voted for you. You represent everyone. Maybe it's that idealistic, naive view of government. You're like, I'm just a bill, a lonely bill. You know, you guys remember Schoolhouse Rock? Oh, yeah. Of what it should be, what you learned about in civics class, what you saw like on the West Wing. I love that show. You know, like the idealized version of what government's supposed to be. I can't tell you my disappointment when I got here and saw what it actually is. That's because you don't have the right people in these positions. You know, I was talking with Sean Shaw, our 2018 Attorney General nominee, and former state representative. He and I are very close friends. I was like, you know, I was really surprised when I got to Tallahassee. Out of 120 reps, there were maybe 3 of us that were there for the right reasons. And I do include myself in one of those. Maybe 3 of us there for the right reasons. And he said, really, that many? Wow. I was like, oh, Sean. He's like, granted, all 3 of us were all freshmen, so, you know, that was after Sean was out of the house. But, yeah, I'm not kidding. Like, the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate, based on my couple of years in there and the past 6, 8 years, should just get together and pick their 200 favorite bills and just send them to the governor after they've all been filed, and we'd save everybody time and money. Because by the end of it, that's exactly what happened. Not a single vote was changed by debate or question on the House floor or in committee. Every single member knew exactly how they're going to vote on every single bill before they got there. And for us, it's not hard. Guns in schools? No. It's not hard. But the Republicans, there were, what was it? I did the analysis, I can't remember. It was like 43, 48 out of the 73 Republicans never once voted no on the House floor in 2 years. What's the point? What's the point? But believe it or not, 89% of the bills that we've passed were near unanimous. But you never hear about that in the news. Strawberry shortcake, who cares? Like, yes, fine, yes. It's not going to hurt anybody. It's not great, but okay. But it's that kind of stuff. You know, we even had a bill, this was actually just an amendment, to rename a bill. I don't know if you remember the news. I'm getting a little off path here, but you guys might like the story. There was like a 6-year-old child who just threw a temper tantrum at school, and the school resource officer put him in handcuffs and put him in the police car. Remember that?
Yes.
We had an amendment, and we got with the speaker as Democrats. We're like, hey, this is obviously wrong. This bill is to prevent that. But the only amendment is we want to name the bill after the kid. Tory's law. I honestly can't. Whatever. And the speaker was like, yeah, that's fine. So, yeah, let's do it. Because their family and the kid were there in the gallery to watch their bill being passed. So as amendment to rename the bill. And for amendments, you can just do it by voice vote, right? Like, yay, nay, and then they say, yay, it's happened. It's a Democratic bill, the nays always. But for this one, we requested as Democrats, if 5 people raise their hands, you have to put the amendment to the board so everybody votes to count the votes and to see. And we wanted to show this family Florida supports you. What happened was wrong. We're going to show you how much we support you. So we went to the board. 1 Republican voted no. And ruined that family's time. Ruined it. For no other reason than, I apologize for saying this, but just to be a dick. Yep, that's exactly what it was. But believe it or not, right after that, 10 Republicans got up to go yell at 17. What the hell are you doing? And we had another bill 10 minutes later to name a coral reef off the coast of Florida after one of the reps who had just died from cancer. 1 no vote. 7. Why are we doing it? Why do we have people like that in government? As voters, as electors, We need to, as a state, be better at educating ourselves. Until I got involved, like I said, I didn't even know who my state rep was. And that was on me. Because if people knew what the legislature had been doing in their state government, there's no way a single one of those people would go back to the House. No way. I'm not kidding when a bill armed school teachers. Out of the 120 members of the House, 40 members of the Senate, he said I did a combat tour in Iraq, went on over 200 combat missions. I was the only one who ever been in a gunfight. And when I debated against this bill about the chaos and fear and confusion during a gunfight, especially when it's only 8 hours of required training, you get to go shoot 10 rounds at the firing range. Now here you go, here's a gun. So irresponsible and dangerous. Did they listen? No. 4 Republicans got permission from the Speaker to vote no because they had made prior promises that they would. Other than that, straight party line.
Yeah, get permission to vote no.
Republicans do. Because that's something that other people won't tell you about Tallahassee. It's not based on good ideas or on merit or on public policy or doing what's right for Florida. It's based on little punishments. Do you know what happened to Sabatini after those votes? They moved his office to the basement.
Sorry.
They did. But if you speak out, especially in the majority, we have a little bit more leeway because we're in the minority. We're in 27 fistfights every day. We know we're going to lose, but we still fight. But the worst things that they can do is kill your bills, stop your appropriations, which a lot of reps are unwilling to sacrifice that, so they will make concessions. I didn't. You guys remember Amendment 4?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that horrible legislation that basically wiped out the will of the people? Remember in the news when it was called a poll tax?
Mm-hmm.
I was the one that called it a poll tax in the Criminal Justice Subcommittee. I jumped on that sword because 64% of Floridians voted for it. I knew they were going to kill my bills, but I did it anyway, because it was the right thing to do. They killed a bill to help a 5-year-old developmentally disabled child. We had to go around the system and find that kid care, or he would have died. But they killed the bill that was going to help him because I said poll tax. They killed a bill for veteran suicide prevention that was ready for a vote on the House floor because I said poll tax. And a lot of reps are unwilling to make that sacrifice to do what's right because they're afraid of these little punishments. And in the Republican caucus, those little punishments are, oh, now you're not going to get the chairmanship of that committee. Now your bill for XYZ for strawberry shortcake's not going to pass. And they're willing to compromise their integrity and pay that price so they can personally see some kind of gain.
It's pure vindictive.
It is. Ask Sabatini, whose office is in the basement of the Capitol right now.
Mm-hmm.
They've done things that they've moved people's parking spaces out of pettiness in the Capitol. But this is what I'm saying, when we need the right people, we need to change our behavior at the ballot box. And until we do that as a state, nothing's going to change. Because we can't make these changes unless we win. Now this race, as I mentioned as the state auditor, we got a lot more teeth in this than Nikki has had as the agriculture commissioner. Now she's been doing a great job and fighting the fight as best she can. But as a CFO, I got to dig into every single dollar that the state has spent in every department. And we have 5 minutes.
No.
And we also have a small division of FDLE that we hold people accountable to that. So we got a little more teeth in the CFO's office.
Do you have a website that has the summary of the many important things that you said today that we can?
So our website's a little sparse, because I don't know if you've seen it in the news, but not gonna lie, fundraising's been tough for Democrats across the entire state of Florida. You can look at Charlie, you can look at the other cabinet candidates. I think I've raised twice as much as the next highest cabinet candidate, and I've still only raised a third of what the CFO nominee did 4 years ago. So our website's a little sparse because we have to be judicious with that money. Just like I have to be judicious with your money when I'm your CFO. So we put it into where it's going to go the farthest.
But what you're saying right now is, I would like a copy of what you're saying right now.
Yeah, well, believe it or not, there's tons of interviews that we have online. That's what I was going to say. The Orlando Sentinel just put out their endorsement article today, my endorsement interview with them, where I say basically, not quite word for word, but almost word for word, this discussion is all on there. There's a great one from the Palm Beach WPEC, CBS Channel 12, that went up about a week ago.
Or was that Tampa, the first one?
The Orlando Sentinel.
Orlando, okay.
Tell them about the insurance forum.
Oh yeah, and just 2 days ago, it was about an hour and a half long. We had public insurance adjusters, insurance company, private insurance adjusters, public consumer protection lawyers. We even had a lawyer from insurance companies. We had contractors. We did a big property insurance forum that kind of looked at the issue from both sides. And I thought, giving both sides argument to let people decide for themselves. And we have that on YouTube, and you can get that link after the fun. What else? I think I got time for one more.
I was just going to say that I think it's also important to, in the hopes that we get rid of DeSantis, that we have a cabinet with 2 Democratic votes, at least.
Yes.
Well, and here's the thing, is the governor's the tiebreaker. So if we get Charlie and me, we control the cabinet. And well, yes, absolutely. But if there's only going to be 2, this race, the CFO, this is the most winnable out of them all. So we need the governor and one other. So Charlie and me, if we get all 3 of us, that'd be great. But then we could control the cabinet. But here's where we have to be careful. The Florida Senate is 1 seat away from a Republican majority, which makes them veto-proof. So even if, Brent and Joy and Unic and Janelle and Janet Cruz, like this in a tough defense. So if we lose 1 or 2 more of these seats, even if Charlie and I win, and we veto whatever crap that they put out, they can override that veto. So these Senate seats are extraordinarily important. But don't let yourselves be distracted by the culture war stuff. We saw it. Remember the special session for congressional redistricting? Right before that happened. And right before that special session, they said, we're also going to focus on punishing Disney. And the world freaked out and became about Disney instead of congressional redistricting. And quietly, they gerrymandered a 50-50 state into 20 to 8 Republican congressional seats. And they eliminated 2 African-American minority access seats in a horribly unconstitutional manner, which is in the courts right now. But they were like, ignore me doing this, while they stole your wallet. Like Disney, and then they took your representation, they took your voice. So a lot of these culture war things like ESG, like I was talking about, like CRT, they're trying to get people to freak out about and talk about while they're stealing your money and padding property insurance company profits. So all right, I think we gotta run.